Hi, welcome back to Chamber of Spoilers. Today we're doing a tier ranking of the characters of the first season of Bridgerton, which I was really excited to watch. Kind of middling on it. I enjoyed parts of it, but other parts were no bueno for me. So hopefully this will give you an idea of what my thoughts were. My overall thoughts for the season were that it was really unfocused. Like, I think they were too busy trying to establish all of the characters that would go on to be important later, instead of focusing on the main couple, because they really sacrificed a lot of the story in order to make space for other characters and for plots that I didn't think were necessary, at least like necessary to flesh out so much going forward. Anyway, so we'll get started here with our tiers. At the very bottom here we had I Wish I Had a Truck to Hit You With, but It's 1804, basically characters who I wish I could murder vehicularly. Over here we have the Cut Direct, characters with whom I would like to cut all social ties and pretend they do not exist. Then we have We Are Not at Home to Visitors. If they came calling, I would not see them in my sitting room, but I'm not going to pretend they don't exist at social functions. Not mentioned at Lady Whistledown basically means you bore me, but I don't hate them with any kind of passion. Tolerable enough basically means a character I didn't love, but I was fine to watch. I don't have any ill will towards them. And Behold Your Queen is a tier reserved possibly entirely for Lady Danbury, who is the only character on this show I always love to see. Probably, I don't know, I guess we'll see as we go through it. But that is our tier ranking, so let's move forward. I'm going to start actually at this end. So with Penelope, I really liked her initially, because I always have sympathy for an underdog. She's has a really difficult life in a really terrible household, so I appreciate that. But at the same time, she is terrible to everyone she loves and doesn't handle her problems in a direct way. I mean, and you know the spoiler was coming, so how do you develop a secret life as a gossip columnist in order to deal with your problems? That's not something that an adult would do. Like, she's so obviously so juvenile, and I hated it, and I hated that she didn't deal with stuff. And also she, like, isolated herself from her best friend, and I really just did not like her a lot. I hope moving forward that her motivations become more clear, because maybe it was just that the writing did her a disservice. Moving on to another character I don't like. Daphne, we're supposed to like her. I think maybe it's due to the actress, but she kind of always had a deer in headlights situation going on. My partner and I were watching it. We were like, does she always look terrified, or is it just that her eyes are big? I definitely understood her motivations a lot more than Penelope. My main issue with her is obviously that scene, and that she basically handles her relationships with the maturity of the 18-year-old she is. And she doesn't really have the tools she needs to move forward, which she does call her mom out on at one point. So I appreciate that. Personally, I would say I'm not at home to visitors to her. I think that she does care a lot about her family. I think that she basically got done dirty by the writers. And I hope that moving forward, she is a better spouse. Next, we have Simon, who is very attractive and a really interesting, good character. I do think he got done dirty again, as we're saying. The main couple really did not have the space they needed in this season. But I think he's not mentioned by Lady Whistledown because I really wanted more from him. The first half of the season, we got so much backstory, and that should have paid off with more emotional resonance for him. They could have easily had a scene with Lady Danbury where she was just like, your life was so tragic, but you can have the chance to have a family, and he could have broken down and talked about how much he desperately wanted to be with Daphne and have a family and a life together, but, like, he's scared and blah, 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 and instead we got, like, a pitiful nothing. Basically, like, half-assed, like, you're right, I'm wrong, which really did a disservice to the character, and honestly just felt like they were like, okay, we need to squeeze in a little more of this story that we've been hyping up. So I hope that the writers do better for him next season. Eloise, I really don't like. I guess I do have to put her in the Cut Direct because I really found her to be so irritating. She is this 17-year-old girl in a terrible society that does not think of women as people, but as property to be exchanged between men upon marriage. And I understand how frustrating that might be, but does she really think that she, a woman with no title of her own, some property but not not, like, independent wealth by any means. Does she think she's going to change the entire system by being a cranky little child? Like, I think she's so unreasonable. She's terrible to her friends. Has a really annoying sense of self-importance, and I hope that she matures. I don't know if that's what we're supposed to get. Also, I didn't love the actress for this part because it may be her voice, it may be the haircut being too severe, but she just spoke older to me. If I had to put her and Daphne in a line, I would say Daphne was the youngest of the two. I really think the character would have worked a lot better if it wasn't so, like, irritating every time she opened her mouth. Like, oh no, the lot of women is terrible. Yes, everybody knows that. You don't have a lot of bargaining chips here, lady. Like, it was just really frustrating to think, like, oh, other people have worse problems. She just seemed so self-centered. Marina is a different, like, person for me entirely. I think I'm going to put her firmly in the not mentioned by Lady Whistledown tier, even though she is frequently mentioned by Lady Whistledown. What was really hard about that for me, about having Marina in the story, is that I felt like she wasn't given enough. I feel like she didn't have enough to work with as a character. I was really frustrated by her storylines. It felt as though she was being punished for the writer's lack of imagination, for lack of a better word. I think that I love the actress for the part. I think that she conveyed as much emotion as she could have given the circumstances, but really, she didn't have consistent motivation. She wasn't a really good representation of what it actually, like, what actual landed gentry would be. People who are looking for a marriage no matter, like, I didn't understand any of the choices she made, basically, and I hated everything she did. She was really mean to, like Colin trying to get him to marry her and then not realizing it was wrong until later. No, she knew it was wrong. That's not a good thing to do to anybody, if you really care about them, or if you see them as a human being, even. The Queen, I think I'm going to put in tolerable enough, because I really empathized with her. I think the actress is amazing, and I really liked how she conveyed that sense of, like, listlessness. Like, she clearly doesn't have as much going on in her life as she wishes, so she kind of embroils herself in this gossip and these scandals in order to, like, find some meaning in her life, because the person who she loves is fading away before her eyes. That's just really tragic. So I really enjoyed her, like, the way that she spoke about that as she was a kid. Like, the way that I really enjoyed the way that the character spoke through her, even though she didn't have a lot of lines. Like, she really made that come through, which I really liked. And also, I think the Queen's role is it's always fun to see what autocrats do, especially when there's low stakes. Lady Featherington. I hate her. I'm putting her all the way in the bottom of I wish I had a truck to hit you with, but it's 1804. Obviously, the reason she's here is because she does not do a great job managing her household. Any woman who keeps a household would know how much money was going out and coming in. Even if a husband manages the books, she does the household stuff. She would know when people weren't getting paid. And so she should have been more on top of it. Also, like, not having money in her trust, in, like, a trust of her own. Like, obviously, most women don't have any money of their own, but if she really needed to marry off one of her daughters, she has a dower fund that she could probably pull from. Like, it's possible that for him to have spent everything, and if he did, she's an idiot. Obviously not to blame her for her husband's gambling addiction, but, like, she clearly doesn't communicate effectively with him. She's a bad mom to her daughters. She has terrible taste, and I hate her. You could very much say that she's a woman of the world she lives in, but at the same time, she's not kind, she's not understanding, and she's terrible to Penelope, which is a really black mark in my book. Papa Featherington also goes in the I wish I had a truck to hit you with, but it's 1804 tier, because he does clearly have an addiction, which is not a great thing. But he also does not care about his family enough to, like, even think of them at all. He always thinks of himself first, which is lousy. And he only really feels triumph over his win because it means he can continue to live in the style to which he's become accustomed. Like, he doesn't take responsibility for his actions at all, and then he's dead. Which is going to cause another problem for the Featheringtons. I don't necessarily wish evil upon the family as a whole. I just hate both of the parents. Madame Delacroix, I really like her. I would say she's in the Behold Your Queen category, actually, just because I think that she really admirably takes care of business despite not being super powerful. Like, she's an independent woman and a tradesperson, which gives her a little more autonomy than most of the ladies she waits on. But at the same time, I think, given her circumstances, she handles them with aplomb. I think she's a good friend. I think, in general, I find her to be a really good character, and I understand her motivations, although I don't know why she would go along. I think probably for plot convenience, she'd go along with Eloise believing she's Lady Whistledown, but it seems as though it's a very thin cover there. And now we're up to Mama Bridgerton. I think I'm going to put her here in the We Are Not at Home to Visitors tab. How can you have 8 kids and yet be so not present as a parent? Like, she didn't prepare either her oldest daughter for marriage. She barely chaperoned her. Like, the whole point of parents and older siblings being at events is to chaperone you to prevent you from doing things that will compromise your reputation and ruin your life. And she didn't do that. Just because it ended up reasonably happy doesn't, absolve her of the responsibility to protect her children from themselves. The society's super messed up, and the way that they do things means that she has to be more responsible parent. Also, not telling Daphne about the facts of life is pretty unforgivable, considering how much society keeps young women in ignorance of that. So I think she's firmly in the We Are Not at Home to Visitors tier. Benedict, I honestly am so bored by him that I don't remember his name most of the time, so I'm putting him firmly in the We Not Mentioned by Lady Whistledown tier. His, youthful rebellion is kind of dull, and I don't really find him all that interesting. Hopefully he'll develop more of a personality next season. It seems as though right now I liked his scenes with Eloise, but for the most part right now it seems like his art, and I don't know what I'm doing as an adult yet. I really have no idea how old the brothers are supposed to be. I think the oldest is maybe 30, and then they kind of or maybe 28. I don't know. I really didn't get in a sense that any of these young men understand their place in society, which seems like another fault of parenting, either of Lady Bridgerton or her former husband, who is now no longer with us. Anthony is the worst. I would give him the cut direct just because he's insistent on being the head of the family, but also so bad at it. Legally speaking, he's responsible for all of his family members, but at the same time, he's so, I think incompetent's the only word you can use. He's terrible and not thoughtful. I mean, I enjoyed the scenes with him and his brothers because it seemed as though, they actually all like and respect each other, but he basically treats his mom like a child, even though she is much older than him and in some ways much smarter. I just found him to be so terrible, and all of his interactions with Sienna were worrying to me, just because I don't like relationships with bad power dynamics, and also I think they both knew that it was never going to work, and he needed to be the one to be like, this needs to end, and then she had to be responsible to do it, which is shitty of him. So, the cut direct. Colin is tolerable enough for me. I think he's very sweet and well-meaning. He's kind of a pawn this season, though. So I'm hopeful the next season he'll get something to do that isn't this. Or he'll just be off on his tour. And that'll give Penelope some time to be worthy of him. Of course, my queen, Lady Danbury, belongs in the Behold Your Queen tier. I don't know what it says about me. That I think that one of the only good characters in this show is a mother figure who rescues a little boy from a terrible father. Maybe that I wish I'd had someone to rescue me. But she is wonderful and perfect, and I adore her. And I just like her autocratic manner. She's like, I know best, and I know that I know best. And she, actually does care a lot about Simon and his happiness. And she feels like she understands where his problems are coming from, but she doesn't butt her head in too much. She tries to let him figure it out on his own. I think she's a really good mom. Even though she's not actually his mom, she's his mom. And now we're down to 2 characters who barely got any screen time, and one of which is basically forgettable. The prince, who I think Prince Frederick. I think I'm going to go not mentioned by Lady Whistledown. This guy was so boring that I didn't even notice that I knew the actor from something. He's been in a bunch of other stuff that I've seen. Freddie Stroma, I believe. But, so boring, so forgettable. You knew obviously that she wasn't going to pick him, but at the same time, there were no stakes. It was so inscrutably dull. I cannot comprehend why they made him so boring. Lastly, we have Will Mondrich, who I liked as a character. I think that his struggle is very relatable, but at the same time, I thought this is really all they can give him. Like, it seemed as though they were like, oh yeah, we remember he exists, we'll put him in this episode. So I'm going to put him in tolerable enough because I liked the character and his problems, but I also didn't think he had enough to work with. I think the writers, yet again, did somebody nerdy who could have been really great. I think the main problems this season, as we can see from my from my neat ranking with the black characters at the top and the white characters at the bottom, is that the characters who are supposed to be main characters, like we've got most of the Bridgerton family down here, and most of the Featherington, and like half the Featherington family as well. They're supposed to be the main families, and yet all the characters who I actually enjoyed watching for the most part are side characters. Like, they didn't write the main story well enough between the leads. They didn't write. Like, it was just kind of disappointing. I did enjoy a lot of it, aside from that scene, but I think that this season was seriously underwritten and not well outlined. They were going for maximum impact, and I feel like they kind of bit off more than they could chew on this one. So that's my take. I really enjoyed the show. I'm looking forward to next season, and maybe I'll rank some characters then too. Bye-bye.